Hello, all you lovely Loki ladies or lords. Today, we'll be discussing episode 202 of Loki and why I continue to love this series so very much. Since I'm pretty behind the curve on this review, I'm a little late getting it out to you all. I apologize. Let's just get into the meat of this episode, which for me really was the good cop, bad cop dynamic between Loki and Mobius in this episode. Look, I said last week in my review of episode 1 of season 2 that their dynamic continues to just be one not only of great chemistry comedically, but also just their acting styles really go well together, with Loki being this much more Shakespearean or dramatic character with kind of these instances of narcissistic humor, if you will, mixed with Mobius, who has the Owen Wilson simplistic charm to him. And those two elements just continue to work well together, especially in this episode when you throw in the added components of Sylvie being back in the mix of things and working with the other entities at large in the TVA, and kind of how they're all dissecting this information that they are not in fact born and created of and for the TVA, but they were stolen from timelines, that they themselves are variants, the very thing they would have been hunting. And I think that is what is at the crux of this episode, is this really interesting kind of dissection of what happens when your entire worldview is flipped upside down, because there are people that refuse to go along with any sort of change, like the kind of head honcho lady. There are people who try to benefit from the confusion, which is what happens with C30, I think is his name, or Brad. And then there are also the people who completely accept the truth immediately and are trying to work on the good side, which is sort of where B15 stands, of trying to assume order. And I think it's really interesting too, because in this episode we kind of get to dissect Mobius a little bit more and explore the fact that he's faced this truth, he trusts Loki, he's on Loki's side to help kind of reform and fix the TVA. The score has always really been great in this show. I think anybody who would argue otherwise kind of doesn't know what they're talking about. But in this episode specifically, I just really noticed it. It's just really beautiful. Okay? That's all. That's my opinion and that's my thoughts on it. Can't really articulate it much better than that. I really love the fact that in this episode, we really get back to playing with Loki's changing allegiances, his ever-changing allegiances. We're back to that, because the entirety of the MCU, after his kind of villainous role in Thor and his more villainous role in Avengers, it's always is Loki changing for the better, or is he reverting to his mischievous old ways? He is, in fact, the god of mischief. This is a part of his nature, to be a trickster and to be a magician. But in this episode, we get to see him use this in multiple different ways, and it's played not only well within the plot of the episode of all these people at the TVA think that Loki is dangerous, they don't trust him, they think Mobius is crazy for doing so, and so we sort of get that sense of Loki's tactics for tracking down Brad are to use his more villainous, powerful side. Whereas there's also the other scenes once we get back to the TVA and he's in that holding cell that we're wait a minute, has he learned nothing from this whole season? Because that would be canonical to his character. So it's a really great job the writers have done here, and it's honestly one of the first times I've really felt this in a way beyond just catering to what fans love about a specific character, but it's the inherent knowledge of a character and using that for plot-driven purpose in this episode. Again, also the other thing that's great that comes along with those changing alliances is Loki being able to use his power, because he's back on Earth, he's outside of the TVA, and he's kind of freed from his shackles. Because the whole first season, you kind of forget in some ways that this is the guy that was going through portals and working with the Chitauri and and stealing tesseracts and doing all of his multiplicity acts. Whereas here, in the whole first season, he's just kind of a detective. And now we get to see him causing, again, some mischief and mayhem, but it's in this kind of organized fashion of what the TVA is. And I also think what's really fun in this episode is getting to see someone who's much more of a straight shooter like Mobius realize the benefits of when there are kind of no rules to the society that we're living in. You kind of got to lean into the Loki side, and that's sort of a progression of his character from the first season, taking this risk on trusting this variant of Loki and feeling that he's the one that's going to be able to help them get their man. So really loved that return to the mischief and the magic and the whose side is he on-ness of Loki's character. I also do have a theory that I've developed in this episode, but as a disclaimer, I have seen the next 2 episodes of Loki. And while this theory has yet to be confirmed or denied, All I want is a note here that when I later tell you what my theory is, that you know that I had it when I watched episode 2, okay? That's very vague, I understand, but for the sake of not trying to spoil anything, I'm not going to put it out there. I just want it noted that I had a theory, because last time I had a theory about the timekeepers, I ended up being correct. So please let me know what you think in the comments. Do all the lovely YouTube stuff if you would. I am currently on my path to 4,000 and then 5,000 subscribers. My goal is to hit 5,000 subscribers by my birthday in December. So we're kind of getting tight on the deadline. I know, and that's on me. But I would really appreciate if you subscribed if you enjoyed this kind of content. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely, lovely rest of your day or night, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks. Thanks, bye. Bye. Thanks so much.